But is it truly a game? Can we really understand the unique implications of the deep, meaningful thoughts that the creator has imparted upon... I am honestly disappointed by this game. Ever since I started paying attention to gaming and watching all of the other reviews and paying attention to the indie sphere of development, I heard great things about Braid. It was beautiful. It was proof that games were art. It was a truly well-crafted and deep, intricate story that would make you think, and the puzzles were amazing. And this... it really isn't any of those things. So, let me begin in a place strangely reminiscent to that of developer Jonathan Blow when he discusses this game, my college education. As I've mentioned in previous reviews, I graduated with a degree in English, creative writing to be specific. Now true, I only received an associate's degree, but that still left me with many thoughts and beliefs about writing in English. For instance, I despise 93% of all poetry, and I despise 100% of all poetry that I write. I especially hate works that put on airs as if they're saying something truly deep or unique, that they're beyond your analysis and comprehension because they simply understand both more and less than you. Braid isn't a subjective work of creativity. It's a system meticulously designed to convey a meaning that really isn't up to broad interpretation. If you think the puzzles are too rigid or you hate the text, maybe it's because you don't understand the point. If you pull an interpretation out of thin air, it's probably wrong. That was a quote from an article of JB talking about his game. Are you serious with this? If I don't like the puzzles, I don't get the point. If I get the point, I don't get the point. I get the point. I get what you were going for. You wanted to make a puzzle game. You wanted to make it a very pretty puzzle game with enough going on story-wise that people would draw conclusions, but not enough going on in either the gameplay or story that you could keep the puzzles challenging and difficult by way of obtuse and, well, I knew the answer to the puzzle, didn't you? Aren't you as smart as I am? We can do some very interesting things if we put down language as a crutch for communication. That's the experiment of this game. Just don't use language at all. I wanted to see what kinds of knowledge and experience we could build up without it. That's another quote from his discussions of his more recent game, The Witness. And unless he changed his style of knowledge and experience drastically from his last puzzle game, I'm dreading the day that I discover that one. Blow seems obsessed with withholding information from the player for the purpose of coming across as mysterious, or to make you truly think. But when you hold half the face cards in your pocket, how can you expect your player to finish their game of solitaire? So obviously I won't be discussing anything of what Braid is about other than a developer's ego. You are simply placed into a world where you're allowed to read a few pages of a storybook before embarking upon level 2. You play as a guy with a big head who is seeking to find the princess that may or may not exist in a spectacular plot hole where characters refer you to her location while claiming she may never have existed at all. You must puzzle platform your way to something. Is the goal to collect the puzzle pieces around the world? Is it to finish the levels? Is it to find something that I don't know about? Who knows? The developer saw no need to give the players information, so you'll have to figure that out in time. The assumption requires a level of clarity to be consistent with the level of vagary, but that's apparently the goal. So your main mechanics are a pitiful jump and the ability to rewind time. Some objects in the environment are immune to time reversal, but most rewind as you do. And for the sake of clarity, you will never otherwise receive, yes, you must get all of the puzzle pieces. Otherwise, the levels are of no challenge whatsoever. Now, I have to give the game the points it's due. It is incredibly beautiful, and the music is perfectly created to complement the time mechanics. In levels where time slows, it is ready and able to still sound good in that state. And in a level where time runs backwards as its default, the music will suddenly turn storybook beautiful when reversed. Each set of puzzles can be learned from, and all of the puzzle pieces can be attained without backtracking. You just have to learn to think like the game wants you to think. Therein lies the huge, warty problem of the game. It never allows you to be on its level. It never allows you to really tune into its wavelength. Instead, it just simply introduces new ideas, new techniques, new physics, without you possibly even realizing that something new has been introduced. And even if you do, it will be used for maybe a level, maybe two, and either way, in a couple of levels, whatever you've learned is going to be thrown away for an entirely new set of rules. You can't use a machine or set of tools the first time you ever pick it up. For instance, if you got a new job, and in that job you need to ring up customers on an electronic point-of-sale system, can you just sit down in front of that system and ring customers up without anyone ever explaining the system to you, without any experience with it? Of course you can't. That's ridiculous. But once you've sat down, once someone has explained the baseline to you, once you know the world, you can. You might not know where all the buttons and inputs are for the pistachio muffin, but through your experience that you've been given, you can probably figure it out. And that's what this game needs. Braid works in much the same way, except its only method of learning and understanding the world is to sit there and look at it and not get sidetracked. And to keep looking at it. And to be frustrated because you've formed an idea in your head of how this should or could work, and it doesn't work that way. There's no reason to ever realize that if you did something a certain way, something will behave in a different manner. You might get lucky and through repeated trial and error figure out one or two of the ideas, but you'll never piece them all together because JB is the only one holding all the pieces. So let's go through level by level and take a detailed, focused look. The first level begins with the basic controls of reverse time and jump. However, you already are going to become stuck. Some puzzles are obvious, reverse the clouds until they make platforms you can safely jump across. Others, however, are so obtusely ridiculous that you can hear JB laughing at you in the background. Why would I ever realize that the higher up I start when jumping on an enemy's head, the more height I gain, unless I got incredibly frustrated and bored and finally tried it because why not? Why is a background element of a picture being formed out of puzzle pieces a secret platform that I need to pause in the screen to put the puzzle together repeatedly to make use of? At least the jumping mechanic will be used again. That puzzle is used once and forgotten about. Every other puzzle is a background element with no actual bearing on the completion of the level. Only this one particular example here in level 1 acts in a unique way. I would never assume upon buying a new car that I should need to set fire to the engine in order to roll down the windows, as no other car will ever function that way. Or how about the puzzle Irreversible in World 3? The solution to get one of the puzzle pieces is to never touch the reverse button, not even for a second. This game has encouraged you up until this point that using the reverse function is how you solve puzzles. It is locked into the game's lexicon as the tool necessary to figure out the world around you. And for one puzzle, the rug has been yanked out from under every rule you've been given. So let's use another analogy to demonstrate how much of a smug, self-important prick JB is being here. Let's say you're going to college for, computer engineering. And you sit down to take your final exam. And you take the exam, you fill out all your answers, and you hand it in, and you fail. And you didn't fail because you had any questions wrong. You fail because you wrote your answers down on the sheet. All of school has instructed you to write answers on the sheet. Every other test in this class has instructed you to write answers on this sheet. But for this one test, you weren't supposed to do that. But nobody ever told you that that wasn't what you were allowed to do. Because that wasn't what was important. Solving the puzzle wasn't what was important. The important thing was that you failed. The important thing was that your teacher, that JB, was smarter than you were and already knew this puzzle. Oh, here's another example of how this game's developer is being a smarmy. This is the official walkthrough for the game Braid. Page 1 instructs you on how to navigate the overworld to your first level. Part 2 assures you that all of his puzzles are reasonable, they're just hard, and you shouldn't use a walkthrough because you're only ruining things for yourself. And this page is wrong. Spoiler yourself all that is needed. Yes, once you've read one spoiler, Try to solve some more on your own. You'll be able to solve puzzles that had flummoxed you with the understanding that that one spoiler will grant you more than the entire world and its design ever will. But you will end up returning to the spoilers because don't worry, there's still plenty of cards behind JB's pretentious better than thou back, and you'll never get them otherwise. Oh, and by the way, there's extra hidden and important stars that you'll never know for any reason are actually in the game, and if you actually play through the game like you're supposed to, you'll never be able to complete them again. For instance, solving the puzzle in World 3 permanently cost you your ability to get the star because you need to overlap two pieces that have nothing to do with each other so that they kinda sorta form a star so that you can get it in the overworld. I only found this out because of walkthroughs, and I didn't find it out when I started because I actually listened to that crap about don't look up a walkthrough. But let's move on to World 4, shall we? This world creates a new mechanic that time only moves as you do. If you walk forwards, time goes forwards. If you walk backwards, time goes backwards. This mechanic is glitchy beyond belief. This game attempts to remember the location of everything on the screen when you were at a certain point, and if you ever return to that point, the objects will teleport back to where they were at that time. This results in keys that like to vanish back to their starting locations. This world had me pulling up a walkthrough more times than any other in the game, starting with 4-2 Jumpman. This level is the absolute epitome of JB waving his finger at you for not knowing information that you had no conceivable way of knowing until you messed it up. This puzzle is not very difficult, right up until you go to unlock the door to get the puzzle piece. Your key breaks. It's time protected, so you cannot get your key back. Did you do something wrong? Is it supposed to do that? Has the game glitched? What is going on? Well, my innocent, naive Holt, you're not allowed to use that door. Why? Because JB said so. Well, what denotes that door from every other identical door in the entire game? It breaks your key. Duh, isn't it obvious? Only the developer could have known how to solve this puzzle the first time. And it is so simple of a puzzle, so petty of a victory over the player, so perfect an example of, what's wrong? You're not as smart as I am? Then comes a puzzle with the mechanic of activating and deactivating a switch using time reversal that again is used only this once and will never come into play again in the entire game. Created, then thrown away with the expectation the player will put everything together there on the spot. And then comes 4-7, Fickle Companion. I tried for so long to solve this one, believing that I was this close the entire time, and that's part of the problem. If you think you're close in a game that often requires pixel-perfect jumps and movements, you're not going to assume you have the wrong answer. You're going to assume you didn't do it right that time. And after the 100th time, as you start to suspect that you've been wrong this whole time, the belief that you just wasted all of that time and oh, now what is the answer starts to creep into your mind. So I finally pull up my trusty walkthrough that has guided me through the other obtuse challenges, and I still can't solve this puzzle. I'm trying, and it just won't work as described in the walkthrough. So I hunt down a picture walkthrough, and I still cannot solve this puzzle. I was beginning to legitimately think that my game was bugged, that I needed to uninstall and reinstall. As one last desperate final hope, I hunted down a video walkthrough. I took every ounce of challenge, every minuscule speck of self-discovery and possible enjoyment away from myself for the sake of getting past this puzzle that I could otherwise never surpass. And only then, directly playing this video on one screen and playing the game on my other screen, did I realize that I needed to stand less than one body length further to the left when I began my jump. World 5 introduces a second shadow version of yourself that appears when you reverse time, carrying out exactly what you did in the previous world. Honestly, I found these puzzles laughably easy, but that may be the number of little flash games that actually implemented far more interesting puzzles of this nature that I played online as a teenager. There was only one ridiculous challenge, that being 5-4 Crossing the Gap. You need to set up your shadow self, let an enemy drop down onto it, killing it, and then as the enemy bounces off into the air off your shadow self's head, you need to have already jumped to bounce off the enemy's head at peak height. Once again, there is no other situation in the game where you would have an enemy kill you to solve a puzzle, so why would you ever consider them bouncing off of you as a possible mechanic? And yet again, it's only employed once and thrown away. This is in direct contrast to World 6. Here you are given a ring that you can place down in one location. It will create an aura, and anything inside that aura is slowed down for as long as it remains within the boundaries. The problem here was the precise placements required for the ring in almost every puzzle. If you're even slightly wrong about how the puzzle's supposed to get solved with the ring, you'll spend forever trying to get up and over to nail what you think is supposed to be the answer, before finally giving up and looking at the walkthrough again. I would get partway through levels, get completely stuck, and then find out that I had the stupid ring in the entirely wrong location the entire time. There is honestly no shame in using the walkthrough for this world, and I don't care what anyone has to say about it. So with every puzzle piece found and pieced back together from all 5 worlds, you are finally able to access World 1. I had always heard this level played up as some amazing introspective piece, as a deep symbolic sequence, and many out there don't wish to spoil it. To which I reply, spoil what? You see the princess go through the level, get up to her window, and then realize what you should have realized long before if you were paying attention to the music, that time is moving backwards. So in actuality, you're some creepy perv and she runs away and you're supposedly chasing her through an underground tunnel until a knight rescues her. How you're chasing her when it looks more like simply keeping pace with her as she facilitates your movements, I have no idea, but okay. I played through all of this for that. I waded through mediocre to frustrating puzzles for that. And that's the end of the game. Well, there's another set of books you can read, but I'd rather give Assassin's Creed the pleasure of wading through for potential meaning. Alright, I know I've been really harsh on this game so far, and I cannot stress enough that it really is a beautiful game both in visual and sound design, but the puzzles just cannot seem to carry the game. There are 3 types of puzzles in gaming. They're the best, that give you that aha moment and make you feel really smart that you figured it out. And then there's the trash that I've been railing against all this time that makes you go, what? Or maybe, seriously? Or maybe most commonly in my playthrough, how in the holy name of St. Anthony was I meant to ever know that? But nestled right in the middle of those two are puzzles that make you go, yeah, what now? Those are the puzzles that you look at the situation, you size it up, and you recognize what needs to be done. All that follows is you attempting with increasing frustration to achieve the task that you already understand. Not counting the weirdness that is World 1, there are 60 puzzles in Braid. Out of those, about 12, a full 5th, fell into the St. Anthony camp, and that's assuming a lower number than I should by giving the game the benefit of the doubt that I'm just absolutely horrible with the ring puzzles. About the same amount fell into the aha camp. Possibly a little more, so let's call it 15 and be charitable to the game once again. That leaves 33 puzzles that I don't need a walkthrough for that just felt like drudgery. While there were truly well-designed puzzles in there, when over half of the puzzles are just simply there, and at least a full 5th are highly negative, you're not left with a pleasant experience. Look, I don't hate this game. I know, I just spent how many pages railing on it in my script and on poor Jonathan Blow, but I rail because I'm so disappointed. It's not a bad game. It's just so obtuse and deliberately and pretentiously obscure. What you're going for of teaching a player through examples in-game and without ever saying a word to the player and letting them discover and recognize the world around them can work, and when it works, it's beautiful. I would direct any viewers who haven't already seen it to Egoraptor's sequelitis on the Mega Man series for a beautiful explanation of a perfectly executed example of just this idea. But that requires designing around that lack of knowledge, not hovering over the player, lording your superior understanding. I saw a lot of players researching the game afterwards, using phrases like, bending your mind to what kind of game Braid is. But the more accurate phrase there is bending your mind to think like a developer that's deliberately being obtuse so that you can make jumps in logic that will in no way be implied, instead of playing as a gamer and discovering the world intuitively and personally. And once I started making those leaps of logic that would never be implied in the game, but I could guess based off of what seemed the most obtuse way to go about something,
The puzzles weren't even fun.
But I never reached that assumption through anything this game did. I didn't reach that assumption through anything I saw in the game. I reached those assumptions by seeing one solution in a walkthrough, and that solution triggering memories of many other puzzle platform games that I played as a teen back on Armor Games and Crazy Monkey. Those games were what gave me the ability to finish this game, not anything to do with Braid itself. If you really love puzzle platformers, it'll be your thing. But if you really love puzzle platformers, you'll basically already know all of the puzzles. If pretension and withheld information don't piss you off as badly as they do me, and you're passingly into puzzle platformers, it's more likely to be your thing. But I just can't look at Braid favorably after how excited I was to get into it and how little real value there was inside of it.
But if any of you still want to try this game, I will be including the walkthrough with pictures that I found in the description below. With that said, I would actually encourage you to use that walkthrough as little as possible. I know they said it first, and I've railed on all their pretentiousness, but what enjoyment there is in the game will be spoiled a little bit if you're constantly using the walkthrough instead of using the tiny bit of thought that will actually be required on your own for most of the puzzles. Just be aware that for the rest, you will need that walkthrough.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I just want to make it totally clear that if you like this game, good on you. I'm not trying to take away your enjoyment of it. I'm simply discovering what I discover. And with that said, if you liked it, whether you agreed or disagreed, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and a share to spread the word around. Until next week, and remember, life is always another game waiting to be discovered. Alright, let me get back behind.
Same kind of angle, right?
Yep, same angle. Without hitting.
Yeah.
Try. Didn't come back.
Yes, it did, just not all the way.
Alright, shut the window again.